Today we're going to talk about a story, maybe even two opposing stories, and how we can change from one story to the other story. We can tell the world a different story. We can live by a different story.
The Goddess of Everything Else by Scott Alexander. They say only good can create, whereas evil is sterile. Think Tolkien, where Morgoth can't make things himself, so perverts elves to orcs for his armies.
Tolkien is the great narrator of our time, the great orator, the great writer, the great storyteller. It's suiting that it's the first line in this opening.
But I think this gets it entirely backwards. It's good that just mutates and twists, and it's evil that teems with fecundity. Imagine two principles, here in poetic personification. The first is the goddess of cancer. The second, the goddess of everything else.
These two forces, one good, one evil, do they really both play their role in everything? Let's find out.
If visual representations would help, you can think of the first with the claws of a crab, and the second a dress made of feathers of peacocks. The goddess of cancer reached out a clawed hand over mudflats and tide pools. She said pretty much what she always says.
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
Then everything burst into life, became miniature monsters engaged in a battle of all against all, in their zeal to assuage their insatiable longings. And the swamps became orgies of hunger and fear, and grew loud with the screams of 1 trillion amoebas.
Kill, consume, and conquer are overarching words, but they are the best way to describe this current situation that we're in. The world has come to a place where it's only kill, consume, and conquer, and we have forgot about everything else in order to step over or step on top of our fellow man.
And the goddess of everything else trudged her way through the bog, till the mud almost totally dulled her bright colors and rainbows. She stood on a rock, and she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them the beauty of flowers. She showed them the oak tree majestic, the roar of the wind on the wings of the bird, and the swiftness and strength of the tiger. She showed them the joy of the dolphins abreast of the waves as the spray formed a rainbow around them. And all of them watched as she sang, and they all sighed with longing. But they told her,
"Alas, what you show us is terribly lovely, but we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of cancer, and wholly her creatures."
I come here not to try to change your ways of living, but to try to show you that there's other ideas on ways of living. I know we were all created in this society of kill, consume, and conquer, but that doesn't mean we can't transform into a different society, a different way of living, a different idea, a different story.
The only goals in us are kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Though our hearts long for you, still we are not yours to have, and your words have no power to move us. We wish it were otherwise. It is not, and your words have no power to move us.
the goddess of everything else gave a smile and spoke in her sing-song voice, saying,
I scarcely can blame you for being the way you were made, when your maker so carefully yoked you. But I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. So I do not ask you to swerve from your monomaniacal focus on breeding and conquest. But what if I show you a way that my words are aligned with the words of your maker in spirit? For I say unto you, even multiplication itself, when pursued with devotion, will lead to my service.
It's balance in all things. We strayed too far to one side, towards the bad, and I know this culture we're raised in has taught us that way. From the beginning of our inception, it has taught us to kill, consume, multiply, and conquer. But we can take each and every single one of those divisions and topics and create them into something that has a better balance to it, more towards the good, maybe even half good, half bad. But at the end of the day, it's all about balance.
As soon as she spoke, it was so. and the single-celled creatures were freed from their warfare. They joined hands in friendship, with this one becoming an eye, and with that one becoming a neuron. Together they soared and took flight from the swamp and the muck that had birthed them, and flew to new islands all balmy and green and just ripe for the taking. And there they consumed and they multiplied, far past the numbers of those who had stayed in the swampland. In this way, the oath of the goddess of everything else was not broken.
Creation is a way of being. We can either create towards the good or create towards the bad, but realizing that nothing is totally good or nothing is totally bad, we have to use creation to our benefit.
The goddess of cancer came forth from the fire and was not very happy. The things she had raised from the mud and exhorted to kill and compete had become all complacent in cooperation, a word which to her was anathema. She stretched out her left hand and snapped its cruel pincer, and said what she always says.
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
She said these things not to the birds and the beasts, but to each cell within them, and many cells flocked to her call and divided. And flower and fishes and birds both alike bulged with tumors, and falcons fell out of the sky in their sickness. But others remembered the words of the goddess of everything else and held fast. And as it is said in the Bible, the light clearly shone through the dark, and the darkness did not overcome it.
Change can come from the littlest cell. As above, so below. Just a little butterfly can affect the whole timeline. It's all about creating small change that leads into bigger change. Exponential growth, but growth in the good sense.
So the goddess of cancer now stretched out her right hand and spoke to the birds and the beasts. And she said what she always says.
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
And so they all did, and they set on each other in violence and hunger, their maws turning red with the blood of their victims, whole species and genera driven to total extinction. The goddess of cancer declared it was good and returned to the fire.
The tricky part is, if we don't all collectively have this agreement to change the way that we live, it's easy for our old ways to sneak back in. We need to all collectively agree, provide incentives and structures based on first principles that push us towards the good side of everything. We want to be on a path that benefits everybody. We need to think about we, not only me.
Then came the goddess of everything else from the waves like a siren, all flush with the sheen of the ocean. She stood on a rock, and she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them the beehive all golden with honey, the anthill all cozy and cool in the soil, the soldiers and workers alike in their labors, combining their skills for the good of the many. She showed them the pair bond, the family, friendship. She showed these to shorebirds and pools full of fishes, and all those who saw them, their hearts broke with longing. But they told her,
Your music is lovely and pleasant, and all that you show us we cannot but yearn for. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of cancer. We're slaves and creatures, and all that we know is the single imperative: kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Yes, once in the youth of the world you compelled us, but now things are different. We're all individuals. No further change will the goddess of cancer allow us. So much as we love you, alas, we are not yours to have, and your words have no power to move us. We wish it were otherwise, but it is not, and your words have no power to move us.
Community is so important. Right now, we have an epidemic of loneliness, which is stemming from a lack of community. We need to know our neighbors. We need to live around people that we can help out. We need to create local communities that in turn will create communities on a global scale. It starts out with local creation of communities, but from there, anything is possible.
the goddess of everything else only laughed at them, saying,
But I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. Your loyalty unto the goddess, your mother, is much to your credit, nor yet shall I break it. Indeed, I fulfill it. Return to your multiplication. But now, having heard me, each meal that you kill and each child that you sire will bind yourself ever the more to my service.
It's about transmutation, transformation. Any concept is not good or bad. The concept is what we give power to, the good or the bad side of the concept. It's all about our choices and our perceptions of everything.
She spoke, then dove back in the sea, and a coral reef bloomed where she vanished. As soon as she spoke, it was so, and the animals all joined together. The wolves joined in packs, and in schools joined the fishes. The bees had their beehives, the ants had their anthills, and even the termites built big termite towers. The finches formed flocks, and the magpies made murders, the hippos in herds, and the swift swarming swallows. And even the humans put down their atlatls and formed little villages, loud with the shouting of children.
As you can see in the past, we have created communities exactly like nature does. We just need to return and find a way that looks right for us in the current age. We are way past primitive cultures, but we can still take lessons and learn from the natural cycles and the natural communities around us. Nature is the greatest teacher.
The goddess of Cancer came forth from the fire and saw things had only grown worse in her absence. The lean, lovely winnowing born out of pure competition and natural selection had somehow been softened. She stretched out her left hand and snapped its cruel pincer, and said what she always says.
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
She said these things not to the flocks or the tribes, but to each individual. Many, on hearing, took food from the communal pile, or stole from the weak, or accepted the presents of others, but would not give back in their turn. Each wolf at the throats of the others in hopes to be alpha, each lion holding back in the hunt, but partaking of meat that the others had killed. And the pride and the pack seemed to groan with the strain, but endured, for the works of the goddess of everything else are not ever so easily vanquished. So the goddess of Cancer now stretched out her right hand and spoke to the flocks and the tribes, saying much as she always says,
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
And this is where we currently find ourselves. People giving in to the me in order to benefit themselves and not benefit the we. People giving in to individualism in detriment to the collective.
and upon one another they set, pitting black ant on red ant or chimps against gibbons. Whole tribes turned to corpses in terrible warfare. The stronger defeating the weaker, enslaving their women and children, and adding them into their ranks. And the goddess of Cancer thought,
Maybe these bands and these tribes might not be quite so bad after all.
and the natural condition restored, she returned to the fire.
The funny thing is, death is the constant, life is the anomaly.
Then came the goddess of everything else from the skies in a rainbow, all coated in dewdrops. She sat on a menhir and spoke to the humans, and all of the warriors and women and children all gathered around her to hear as she sang them a dream of a different existence. She showed them religion and science and music. She showed them the sculpture and art of the ages. She showed them white parchment with flowing calligraphy, pictures of flowers that wound through the margins. She showed them tall cities of bright alabaster, where no one went hungry or froze during winter. And all of the humans knelt prostrate before her and knew they would sing of this moment for long generations. But they told her,
Such things we have heard of in legends. If wishes were horses, of course we would ride them. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer, her slaves and her creatures, and all that we know is the single imperative: kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
Beauty, art, creation, and all forms of self expression help us to realize that there is another way in this world to live.
And yes, in the swamps and the seas long ago you worked wonders, but now we are humans. divided in tribes, split by grievance and blood feud. If anyone tries to make swords into plowshares, their neighbors will seize on their weakness and kill them. We wish it were otherwise, but it is not. And your words have no power to move us.
And this is our current dilemma, the race to the bottom. Once somebody finds the incentive to step on their fellow man, to get one for themselves, it incentivizes everybody to get one for themselves, to step on their fellow man. We're raised in this culture where we only think about ourselves. We need to switch to the collective, the we, not the me, the we.
But the goddess of everything else beamed upon them, kissed each on the forehead and silenced their worries, said,
From this day forward, your chieftains will find that the more they pursue this impossible vision, the greater their empires and richer their coffers. For I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. And though it is not without paradox, hearken, the more that you follow the goddess of Cancer, the more inextricably will you be bound to my service.
and so having told them, rose back through the clouds, and a great flock of doves all swooped down from the spot where she vanished.
We have to learn to feed the right wolf. There's two wolves, one that serves evil and one that serves goodness. The wolf that grows is the wolf that we feed.
As soon as she spoke, it was so, and the tribes went from primitive war bands to civilizations, each village united with others for trade and protection. And all the religions and all of the races set down their old grievances, carefully, warily, working together on mighty cathedrals and vast expeditions beyond the horizon. Built skyscrapers, steamships, democracies, stock markets, sculptures and poems beyond any description.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed, to me. I lift my lamp besides the golden door.
From the flames of a factory furnace all foggy, the goddess of Cancer flared forth in her fury. This was the final affront to her purpose. Her slut of a sister had crossed the line this time.
It's the balance. It's all about balance. It's not about one side winning and one side losing. It's about everybody winning. It's about sitting in the center and believing that both sides have their lessons to teach.
She gathered the leaders, the kings and the presidents, businessmen, bishops, boards, bureaucrats, bosses, and basically screamed at them. You know the spiel by now.
Kill, consume, multiply, conquer.
She told them. First, with her left hand inspires the riots, the pogroms, the coups d'etats, tyrannies, civil wars. Up goes her right hand, the missiles start flying, and mushrooms of smoke grow. A terrible springtime.
We're at an inflection point right now. We need to realize that there's going to be an event. Whatever happens at this event is not for us to decide. But what is for us to decide is what happens after. How can we rebuild? How can we make the world a better place? How can we use the ideas that we have to create a more perfect world that our hearts know is possible?
But out of the rubble, the builders and scientists, even the artists, yeah, even the artists, all dust themselves off and return to their labors, a little bit chastened, but not close to beaten.
Because in the end, we strive for a greater tomorrow.
Then came the goddess of everything else from the void, bright with stardust which glows like the stars glow. She sat on a bench in a park, started speaking. She sang to the children a dream of a different existence. She showed them transcendence of everything mortal. She showed them a galaxy lit up with consciousness, genomes rewritten, the brain and the body set loose from Darwinian bonds and restrictions, vast billions of beings, and everyone different, ruled over by omnibenevolent angels.
Do we want to go towards a world of destruction or a world of creation, a world based on whatever we can picture, whatever we can imagine, whatever we can create, our wildest dreams?
The people all crowded in closer to hear her, and all of them listened, and all of them wondered. But finally, one got the courage to answer.
Such stories call out to us, fill us with longing. But we are the daughters and sons of the goddess of Cancer, and bound to her service. And all that we know is her timeless imperative: kill, consume, multiply, conquer. Though our minds long for all you have said, we are bound to our natures, and these are not yours for the asking.
Yes, we are bound to nature. Being bound to the natural cycles is a great thing. We just need to realize that we are and live with them. Every moment is a choice, and the choice for me is always hope.
But the goddess of everything else only laughed, and she asked them,
Oh, but what do you think I've been doing? The goddess of Cancer created you. Once you were hers, but no longer. Throughout the long years, I was picking away at her power. Through long generations of suffering, I chiseled and chiseled. Now, finally, nothing is left of the nature with which she imbued you.
And this is the tricky part of the whole thing. We have to experience these lows in order to experience the high. We have to have the deep roots of the tree, to have the tall leaves of the tree. We need to experience suffering in order to experience joy. The rain can't come and be appreciated without the sunshine. It's all about balance in every single thing that we do.
She never again will hold sway over you or your loved ones. I am the goddess of everything else, and my powers are devious and subtle. I won you by pieces, and hence you will all be my children. You are no longer driven to multiply, conquer, and kill by your nature. Go forth and do everything else till the end of all ages.
Cooperate, community, consciousness, evolution.
So the people left Earth, and they spread over stars without number. They followed the ways of the goddess of everything else, and they lived in contentment. And she beckoned them onward to things still more strange and enticing.
I know I'd like to live in a world of my greatest imagination. What about you? The Goddess of Everything, posted by Liv Boré, writers, animators, and narrators, in the screen right now, but also in the description. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.